Victory in Jesus. May God be merciful to you and bless you in every way. And may your heart stay tuned on to Him. I was saying to a friend this morning, we live in a world that is full of tension, a world that seems to be everywhere on the tipping point. Apart from folks just speaking about nuclear bomb, there are protests everywhere in the world. And when I look at these protests that we are having all over the world, you recognize that the protests and they are almost for the same thing. High prices, jobs, things like that. It seems like the entire world is on edge. And sometimes you ask yourself, if it is universal, it means that it is natural. Or because that's how you know natural and what is right and wrong. It doesn't come from something that is embedded in it, something that makes it so. It becomes natural when everybody does it. If everybody is talking, then speaking is natural. And then those who cannot speak, who are unable to speak, then we know that is unnatural. If everybody is walking, then we know that walking becomes natural. And if everybody can't walk, then that becomes natural. That's how you know what is. Nothing is really universally unless you are having a certain text to quote from. So therefore, if you are using the Bible, then things will become right and wrong based on that. And then if you're using the Quran, right and wrong will be based on that. Then if you're using no book at all, a newspaper, right and wrong will become that. So what we are seeing is something that has become very endemic: crime, poverty, disease, uprising in the street, discontent, and we see a world that is moving in a direction that we never thought was possible. When you see these things happening, remember the Bible had always predicted that a time like this will come. And therefore, the Bible had predicted a time like this to come. I want to say to you this morning, that book predicted all other things also. And if in that book there are other predictions, what you are seeing is a reality of the time. And if what you are seeing a reality of the time, this book has been saying this for as long as this book had been on the shelves and in the stores and in your homes, has been saying these things. So more so, you find yourself in a place to say, well, hey, this book must be true. And if this book is true, then there are other things that this book is asking us to do and asking us to follow. Then we should embrace these things. Because not to is just as the book says, it will lead to eternal damnation. A word to the wise is sufficient. Before we get into our program this morning, I'm not seeing my guests online. I believe maybe the time difference, he may be caught up in the time difference. I hope he recognizes. I'm trying to tell him that we are on. I hope he recognizes that and will come on. But before we do this, I just want to thank those who have continue to give to the program, continue to be there. I just pray. Sorry. Yes, I just want to say thank you. We are coming to the end of the year, end of another year. And next year, we'll be going in the 22nd year of this program. And for those who have kept us this far, I want to thank you very much. For those who want to join, those who have already kept us for so long, you have two numbers to use. First Citizen Bank, TET Limited, number 1450203, 1450203, or on the RBC account 1007917032455. That is 1007912032455. You can, and I want to say something. Some folks seem to not understand that anything, there's no limit. Anywhere you are comfortable, we are comfortable. You know, the saying goes, one cocoa, fill the basket. So anything you have, you give. You can call me also at 379, sorry, 379-4859, 379-4859. You can also call me at that number. So this morning we are supposed to have a guy who into ministry, who have ministry, have taken all through the struggles and things of ministry. So while I'm waiting for him, I just want to go through on born again. If he doesn't come in, we'll continue this. How you are born again. Some people will ask themselves that all the time. How can I be born again? You know, that is what they must ask Jesus. Should I go back into my mother's womb and be born again? And then you see some people are saying they are born again, but they own rum shops and they judge carnival mass and they are there for Juve and they are still saying they are born again. There are some people who are born again and they are singing soca and all sorts of song and dancing up at carnival, and they're still saying they are born again. And then there are some people who say they are born again and they drink and they do everything and they show up at church once a year, Warriors Night, or for a funeral or wedding, and they still say that they are born again. So how do you understand this concept of being born again? What do you know? What do you understand? And this morning I would start it because I am not I don't know if I finish, but if I get through it, I hope the concept of being born again will be embellished in our minds. I'm going to start by talking about a young doctor who was fresh from medical school and internship, had just begun a private practice. And his very first patient was an old gentleman. I'm just giving you an illustration here for us to begin this thing. After compiling his symptoms, the doctor went into his office to try and diagnose what was wrong with this patient. He searched long and hard in medical books, but the young doctor could not found nothing that matched the symptoms that was demonstrated by this patient. So he being frustrated now, he walked back into the examination room and asked, he said, "Have you ever had this before?" Yes, the old gentleman replied, "Many times." But the young doctor said, "Well, you have got it again." Now, as we look around our world and we are seeing the deterioration in our world, it comes to us that whatever it is, we have got it again. The whole deterioration of values, the disruption of stabilizing institutions like the home, the family, and marriage, and the general degradation of society, we can pretty well say that diagnosis that we have got it again. Can we? We can say that because it seems like what has happened before is happening all over again, most to the detriment of this society. You know, we are seeing a new move of transsexual. And if you listen to the commentators on transsexual, you will come to the place to believe that it is as normal as a girl being a girl or a boy being a boy. And once you try to fix it, they are saying that you are doing them great trauma, that you are interfering with their whole psychological makeup that is detrimental to them. All these are lies. In Mark 2:15-17, read, "Now it happened as he was dining in Levi's house, that many tax collectors and sinners also sat together with Jesus and his disciples. For there were many, and they followed him. And when the scribes and the Pharisees saw him eating with tax collectors and sinners, they said to the disciples, 'How is it that he eats and drinks with tax collectors and sinners?' When Jesus heard it, he said to them, 'Those who are well have no need for a physician, but those who are sick. I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance.'" Now, if you are righteous, I want to say to you this morning, if you are righteous, I'm talking to you, then I will make no difference to you. So you can take off the radio, computer, and you can go about your business. I'm speaking to those who are like me this morning, those who are not righteous, those who are struggling each day to overcome that malady that is called sin. If you are a sinner, I hope that you are going to learn something this morning. When you go to the doctor, one of the things that he usually does after taking your history is to use a stethoscope and listen to your heart, because he knows that if your heart isn't functioning properly, then probably a lot of other things aren't as well. I have a friend who recently, after sitting up all night long in discomfort with what she thought was the flu, spent several days in the hospital. Her doctors informed her that she had suffered a heart attack. She had not even been aware that she had. The conditions of your entire body depends upon the condition of your heart. So your doctor evaluates the condition of your heart first. The same thing is true when we ask a great physician to diagnose our condition. The first thing is of the heart, and his report is written. In Jeremiah 17:9, he said, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So the first thing I need for that transformation of this life is I need to do a heart examination. After a doctor listens to the heart, he walks, and you have been there before. He walks to the glass jar, takes out a tongue depressor and tells you to open your mouth and say, He wants to examine your tongue because the condition of your tongue often indicates the condition of other less visible parts of your body. Now I'm giving you this for free this morning. In the scripture, and I want you to understand this, and you know how the tongue is. In the scripture, that happens to be the very next place the great physician looks as well. He said in James 3:8, but no man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. No man can tame the tongue. And if not all of you, most of you have been at the end of a bitter tongue, have been at the end of a tongue that seemed to malign you and tarnish you and say things about you to bring harm to you. We all know about that. So the Bible says, but no man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil full of deadly poison. But the Bible said our mouths are full of poison. And if our mouths are full of poison, incidentally, it's killing the rest of the body. But that isn't all. That isn't all. I want to do this examination before I get into the issue this morning. In Romans 3:13-14, we read, their throat is an open tomb. With their tongues, they have practiced deceit. The poison us in their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Not only does the great physician find the heart trouble, but he finds severe chronic mouth problems as well. You know what I'm talking about. I know you know what I'm talking about. Both what goes into our mouths and what comes out of our mouths unmistakably indicate that we have a severe mouth problem. Do you know what is number one health problem in the world? It is mental health. Not surprisingly, the next place the great physician wants to examine is our mind. In Colossians 1:21, he said, and you who once alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now he has reconciled. The Bible says our minds are alienated from God because the carnal mind is enmity against God. For it is not subject to the law of God, nor indeed can be. So we have heart problems, mouth problems, mental problems. So far we got them all, friends. I guess when we say this, we recognize as human beings, we are pretty sick. I know there are some folks in my church, they are not sick at all. They are good. They have their own little group, conscientious group, where they are all conscientious, where they do not fight against cheese and butter, but they fight against vaccination, where they do not fight against meat and lack of exercise, but they fight against medication, where they do not fight against gossip and things, but they fight against things that can make you well. We have that, and they call themselves conscientious. Well, those are ones who we need to pray for more than they can pray for themselves. Now, some of this propensity to spiritual illness is genetic. Some of you have inherited this thing. You have listened to your parents gossip all the time. You have seen all sorts of meat come to your home, all sorts of meat with the blood in it come to your home. You have been in places where the home fabric is one of war and decadence. So you inherit these things. It is all around you. And because we learn by our environment, you become part of that environment and they become part of you. So when it becomes part of you, it means therefore to rescue yourself from this will take a greater effort. In Psalm 51:5, it said, "Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me." And what I'm speaking here, if any of you have children and when they misbehave, what do you say to them? The problem is that truthfully, in those incidents, they were probably more like their father and their mother than really themselves. You see, we inherit some of our spiritual illness from our parents. That's where we inherited from. If we grew up in a house where God was at the top of everything, your parents were honest, your parents were divine, there were no fault in your parents, and that enclave that you are in, there is no fault, then there'll be no fault in you either. But that's not what the real world is. In Psalm 58:3 said, "The wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they are born, speaking lies." So we inherit the propensity from our parents. We have heart problems, mouth problems, and mental problems are often weaknesses inherited from our ancestors. We are bad, we're in bad shape, friend. I want to tell you, these things are passed on. Don't think I'm talking about genetics here. I'm talking about social learning. These things are passed on. The Bible compares our physical condition to our spiritual condition. In Isaiah 1:6, it said, "From the sole of the foot even to the head, there is no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and petrifying sores. They have not been closed or bound up, soothed with ointment." There is no soundness in any of us. So those who are conscientious and those who are holy and those who love criticizing the church and criticizing their brethren and those who like to walk pious and proper, I want to say to you, maybe you believe that you are okay, but my Bible says something about you. My Bible says that you are in need of healing. No, of course, this was not the condition of man in the beginning when God created Adam and Eve. They didn't have heart, mouth, or mental problems. In Genesis 1:27, God tells us, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." As Adam and Eve came forth from the hand of the Creator, they were absolutely perfect. But in order for man to communicate with God, the Bible tells us in John 4:25 that God's Spirit must walk with him. God is spirit, the Bible said. And those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And not only spirit, but in truth. So some of us have a lot of spirit, but no truth. And some of us have a lot of truth, but no spirit. But we must worship God in spirit and truth. You and I are beings that have bodies of flesh and blood. But God is spirit. So when God created Adam and Eve, he gave them a spiritual nature also so that they could communicate with him. Adam and Eve were both flesh and spirit as we are. God has given us that nature to learn for God, yearn for something that is better and bigger and stronger. But something happened to Adam and Eve. In Genesis 2:16 and 17, he said, "And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die." The question is, did Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge and good and evil? Yes, they did. Did they die that day? Yes, they did. not physically. They lived for several hundred more years. But the moment they ate of that forbidden tree, the spiritual nature that God had given Adam and Eve died. That is why they suddenly recognized that they were naked. That is why they hid in avoidance of meeting God. Their spiritual nature had been so weakened, it had begun a process of dying, that it had been needed to be resuscitated. In Romans 7:40 said, "For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. To obey God will take a spiritual awakening." I want you to understand that. The same disparity that existed between Adam and Eve, fleshly nature after the spiritual fall, and God's perfect spiritual nature exists today between us and God. But where do we find that spiritual nature of God? We find in God's law, because the law is spiritual. Romans said that the law is spiritual, but you and I, the flesh. This is the way that we come into the world. Oh, wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? That was 24th Romans. In other words, what I'm trying to tell you this morning is that you were born half dead. You were born only with carnality, with flesh. All your parents could pass on to you is flesh, and you can pass on, and only flesh you can pass on to your children. You have a spiritual nature that is dead, that is in need of resuscitation. It died when Adam and Eve disobeyed God. Because we come into the world only with flesh, when Jesus was speaking to Nicodemus in John 3:3, Jesus answered him and said to him, "Most assuredly, I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of heaven." And you know the works of the flesh. So you need to put away the works of the flesh to come into contact with God once again. I hope you are following me this morning. I hope you are following me this morning. Because I hope you are following me this morning. We have many techniques for trying to improve the flesh. We believe that education is one of the answers for improvement. But education alone won't help. Listen to what the word of the Lord says in Romans 1:22. Professing to be wise, they became fools. The highest degree in the world will not save your soul. Now, I'm not saying don't go for education, because there are some few around us who believe that education is a curse. It's not a curse. But I'm saying if you believe that education will deliver you from the jaws of death and will take you into salvation, you are becoming a fool. In Colossians 2:8, God warned, "Beware lest anyone cheat you through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the tradition of men, according to the basic principles of the world, and not according to Christ." So you cannot start with someone who is flesh and educate him into being spiritual. It will never happen. Something else we erroneously believe will improve our nature is changing the environment. We sometimes believe that by immersing ourselves in church activity, surround ourselves with good people, and spiritual relics like the Bible, religious periodicals, pictures of Jesus, the cross, and so forth, we'll be saved. I've gone into the cars already and see the music pumping with all kind of wind down, jam down, and they have a cross swinging in the dashboard. And as far as they are concerned, that cross is their saving grace. That cross is their deliverance. Friends, you cannot save yourself like that. By changing environment, by reading Bible books, by being in church, those habits are certainly helpful influences. But environment will not change a person. You can bathe a pig, sprinkle him with perfume, put a nice bow on his neck, and dress him up like a dog. But in the heart, he's still a pig. And the minute he gets back outside, where do you think he will go? Right back to the mud hole. and like a pig. Environment will change us for a moment, but we are carnal. But we cannot change into spirituality just through the environment. Something else that people believe is a sure way to get into heaven is keeping the commandment. Oh yes, I've been around those for most of my life. Something else. Now, granted, you are not going to heaven conscientiously breaking the commandment. I want to make that clear. You cannot willfully, conscientiously decide to break the commandments of God and you'll make it into heaven. You cannot. However, how can you take someone who is flesh and tell him to be perfect to keep a spiritual law? The law is spiritual. It cannot be done. The law is holy and just and perfect and spiritual. You and I are unholy, unjust, imperfect, and carnal. The problem is not with the law. The problem is you and me. In Romans 8:5-7, it tells us, for those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh. But those who live according to the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the carnal mind is enmity against God. For it is not subject to the law of God, nor indeed can be. The carnal mind cannot be subject to the law of God. It cannot. Because it's carnal. The things of God are foolishness to the carnal person. And we can't expect a carnal person to keep the law. We just cannot expect a carnal person to keep the law. It doesn't happen like that. I think I see Wayne is on. I see Wayne is on. I may have to Wayne, good morning.
Good morning to you, Pastor.
I recognize you got tied up with the time.
With the time.
Yeah, I had a mind.
You're forgetting that you are 1 hour ahead, you know.
Yes.
But I'm listening to you.
No, I'll bring you in, man. I'll bring you in. How it goes, those who are listening there, I always have them with me. I have to bring you in. Wayne, I will not take out. First, I want to say this is Wayne Johnson. He's a Trinidadian, a gospel minister, living abroad out there in New York. He's a man I've known for most of my young life into my age life. And I trust that he can be. Before I bring him on, I want to tell you something that I have never told you before. That stayed with me for must be 40 years. I remember your sister. How is she when saying so? Who's singing with you?
Kati's okay. Kati's doing fine. She's doing great.
I'm going to tell you something that you may not brush it off. That had kept you in my heart forever. Once I think I was dropping Kati to sing somewhere, and she had left her music. You know, you used to walk around with these background tracks.
Yes, case. Yeah.
We have a stack of it in my car. When I found out, I turned back and I went back up on the Miara Road and I gave it to her. But people were wrong answers, and I feel in the midst of the confusion, it got lost. So she contacted me a couple of days and afterwards. I said, when I came back and I dropped it for you. And she said, no, you didn't. And she began carrying on. I remember clearly, she's telling you the story. She said, you know, Terrence took my thing. And I remember a friend of mine said, was standing, you remember Theo? Theo was standing right there. Theo said, Wayne, no. He wouldn't do a thing like that. She said, yes. He said, no, there's some other mistake, some other title. But I'm telling you, he wouldn't do it. And when he told me that, I said, for the man to put so much confidence in me, I said, this is a brother that I should cherish in my heart forever. So every now and then I tune up. Well, you see me sometimes we could listen to you some night, something on your program and things like that. It's because I tell myself, well, you know, this is a brother I should keep close. And this morning, the pleasure is mine to have you here with me this morning. So Wayne, because of the time, I will give you to tell Wayne's story. Tell a story how you felt that call of God, how you decide that this is where you want to be. You didn't choose the gospel ministry as a pastor, but you choose the gospel ministry to sing for people. And tell me about what somebody must say, listen and want to know, well, how did Wayne stay with this thing so long? And how has God been to Wayne through the whole thing? I will not question this more. I suggest you give me a story here.
Well, first I want to thank you, Pastor Terrence Giles, for this opportunity. It's always good to do something or to talk to the people from back home. God has been good. I must say you need to stay with your calling. There's some people who are singers who are trying to preach, who are trying to pastor. And that's why sometimes you have a lot of problems. Some people are blessed, so they are pastors and they are singers. But I've chosen to stay with my calling, which is the music ministry. And I believe it is one of the most powerful ministry out there where you can, save the lost at any cost.
Yes.
I always have faith. For those who know me, I've always stayed with the music. Our first album was a little cassette album that we launched in GPA Complex. We were the first, my sister and I, gospel artists in Trinidad and Tobago to do a concert at GPA. Was open, newly open, and we got an opportunity. It was a little cassette album called Rejoicing with the Lord. Holy, holy, love in any language, all these we adapt.
Wayne, you ever thought about digitizing it now in this digital age and renewing the tracks, and you ever thought about that?
Well, I just finished and the best of Wayne Johnson album. I did a contemporary with all these oldies, you name them. Wash their feet. The end of the day is drawing near. Hold on, my child. Joy comes. You will always be a child in my eyes. And some written song, God, oh God, is on that album. My little daughter, Leandra, who is doing a great job. I don't want to say replace Cathy, but God, He knows when you miss somebody. It was always Wayne and Cathy.
Mm-hmm.
And now my daughter is there to really stand with me. She is out there getting more calls even as I do. But God has been good. One of the most important things that ever happened in my life, or some of the most important things, is singing and representing Trinidad and Tobago here in New York. With you name the artists, the American artists, like Donnie McClurkin, Alvin Slaughter, Shirley Caesar, JJ, you name them. God has given me an opportunity to minister on stage and also represent Trinidad and Tobago. This is the Caribbean island. But one of the greatest things that ever happened, to Wayne is feeling the power of God, the healing power of God. For those who don't know, I almost died. And not once, not twice, over 3 times. Even now you can see all the weight that I lost, but this is the size, Pastor, that you know me at.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
And the bigger size was not Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
So, but God has kept me. There's a song that says, I won't give up now. I've come too far from where I've started. Nobody told me that the road would be easy, but God has brought me this far. You never brought me this far to leave me. I want to encourage somebody out there, some young person. Sometimes we want something to happen big. This little country boy from Rio Claro, who we were poor and never knew that we were poor.
Oh, yes.
I was talking to my little nephew Micah, and he was saying,
Pastor Michael.
Pastor Micah, and he said, Uncle Wayne, anywhere I go and I mention your name, the people talk good things about you. Thank you for paving the way, Uncle Wayne. You are my mentor. I always admire you, Uncle Wayne. And some of the things that we do in this life, I meet people from all over. I met a pastor. I went to this church to sing, and I met a pastor, Trinidadian born. He was the youth director in Canada. Okay. Still is, I believe. And he said to me, he went up and he said, it's good to see Wayne here after 30 years. He said, Wayne was the singing evangelist in the crusade that I get baptized. Amen. And I said, wow, I meet pastors, I meet elders, I meet people who migrate from, you name it, in the US here. And sometimes you may not recognize or realize what you have done. But as I said, God has kept me, and you have played an important part even before you went into the ministry. Pastoring, you may not remember, but Pastor Mingo and all these guys had come and always invited us, and we take heed to that calling. Tony, Neil Algie, Barry Spear, Kay Allen. Remember folks who were treating Kay a certain way. And I told them, I said, guys, they wanted to discipline her in a concert. And I said, guys, we got to be careful. I told the organizer, I said, we got to be careful how we treat people, because we don't know who we will have to move in one of these days. And one of the key things people need to know how to treat people. It's not about being popular. The Bible said, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, and he will exalt you in due time. Wait on God. Trust God. We have started back our musical church every Sunday evening. It's not an independent church. It's a place where people can come, worshipers can come, singers can come, and I believe the calling God has placed on my life, not to start a church, but we have called it musical church. It's a place where you could log on, go on VOP TV.
VOP TV
channel. Yeah, VOP TV channel on YouTube, VOP TV on a Sunday at 7. We want to build a massive audience of over 100,000. We had over 750,000 people following us on our radio station 11 years ago, where we had some of the biggest Caribbean concert in New York, Brooklyn, New York.
But Wayne, this has to be a sort of struggle. At least at a certain time, it had to be a struggle. Just because music ministry is not really in Trinidad for sure. It's not really a paid ministry, and therefore for you to begin singing, especially coming from Rio Claro, from Myro, I mean, go all the way up in the bush up there, and to become Wayne Johnson, it had to be a real struggle.
Of course. It's been a rough road. For the folks who really know Wayne, I'm a faith man. I believe in crazy faith. I remember being in Trinidad and being discouraged, And one of the reasons I migrated is because of my sister. She got pregnant, as we know, and she was disfellowship. And those days when you do things, not only my sister or the person who did it, but was the whole family. So there was a time that people stopped calling me to sing because it was an embarrassing situation. And then I wanted to get out. I get out, it was a real lonely life. I remember going to Grenada, left Trinidad, wanted a new start. I went to Grenada and we packed out Queen's Park at the time. And then we went to the country, packed out that place. And then I get an opportunity to travel 26 islands. That was the beginning. Knowing and God speaking to me and telling me to launch out into the deep. So I went up from Grenada to Tortola, all the islands, Grenada, St. Lucia, Dominica. And everywhere I went, I stayed by millionaires. Every single island. There I met Pastor Claudius Morgan, who is a powerful, mighty preacher. We made friends, but I've traveled.
Wayne, I'll give you 3 minutes to wrap up the whole story, also the concert, because we finished at 10. So I won't talk.
Right. So
you're in charge.
God allowed me to travel. And that was the way that God was paving and opening up and showing me this is my calling. I want to tell everybody out there, stay with your calling, stay in your calling. If you're a singer, remain a singer, right? Travel through the islands, and God opened a door for me in the United States through Pastor Beryl Matthews. I came to America, and the rest is history. God has blessed me tremendously. He has blessed my family, he has blessed my kids, my daughter Leandra, my son, my entire family, my wife. God has blessed us tremendously. Stay with God. Stay with God. We are looking for something to happen big and huge, but the biggest thing could happen and the greatest thing that could ever happen is making it to heaven. No matter, it's not how you started, it's how you finish. So the folks who are listening in Trinidad, I want to tell you, everybody, you may not get like one of these big artists that everybody want to be like. But God, there's only what you do for God will last. The greatest thing, singing with these guys, they are ordinary people just like us. Meeting them is like meeting anybody. But the greatest thing that could ever happen is us meeting and knowing God for ourselves. Stay with God. He's going to bless.
What about the concert later?
Well, what we did, we canceled the concert for sometime next year.
Okay.
Because the Mighty Sparrow is not well, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not 100%. So we made a decision to do it at a later date next year, Mother's Day, to be exact. You are the first person to really hear that Mother's Day next year, where we will be in better health. But I want to encourage you to do for me, Pastor, with this new album that I'm doing, that just finished Oldies. I've never marketed any of my album since I came to America. The last album we marketed was like never before, but we want every single home to have one of this. I believe this is a great testimony for somebody who left Trinidad 25 years ago. And next year, September, look out, Trinidad and Tobago. We're going to be doing something massive in Trinidad.
Good. Wayne, we'll pick up offline. Thanks for being here this morning. After a while, I recognized that you are not a man to set me up. So I recognized it had to be the time. So it was on me. Thank God he gave me something to present in the interim. Yes. So until we meet again, may God bless you. Trinidad and Tobago, those on the line, wherever you are, we have been speaking this morning to our music minister, Wayne Johnson, sitting out there in New York, and I know his encouragement was indeed a blessing to you. So until next week, same time, same place, God bless you all. Wayne, bye.
God bless.
And thank you very much. That was the program Victorious Lifestyle with Pastor Brown. And we get back to our regular programming right here on Talk City. It's 91.1 FM.
There's radio talk and there's